Welcome to this podcast on franchise supporters. And in this particular session, we are going to talk everything about leases. And I know that this is a topic that many franchisees and business owners are going to want to know a lot about. We have a special guest that happens to be a lease expert. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. So let's go ahead and get started. So welcome, Mr. Tash. How you doing? I'm so glad that you joined us today. And for our audience, please introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and how you end up in the world of leases.
Thanks so much, Aisha. I got to tell you, I'm so glad that we met. What you're doing at the American Franchise Academy is so powerful and it's so important to educate. And for us, I'd say we're also in the education business. So my name's Taj Adhav. You can call me Mr. Taj all day long if you like. Um, but I'm the founder of Leasecake. About a little over 7 years ago, I met a gentleman over a cup of coffee at a diner, and he said, "Hey, because of your business background and your tech background, you should build an app for real estate." And I kind of looked at him and I said, "That's kind of crazy. Here it is, 2017. There's all these technologies out there. Why doesn't a solution like lease management made easy exist?" And it turns out now today we have over 40,000 locations on our platform, franchisees, franchisors, operators that are really building their business empire. It could be their burger empire, their pizza empire, their fitness empire. And I think it's just important to make certain that these incredibly strong, talented business leaders, operators who take that first step into franchising understand that, especially in this retail environment, you need to have a real estate lease and you just don't want to take it for granted because you're obviously growing and you're training your team and you're worried about your opening dates. But the more locations you have, the greater the risk that you face. So we're a risk and compliance based lease and location management solution made easy. That's why it's called Leasecake. It's a piece of cake.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's like a piece of cake. You know what? And the reality is that leases are probably, a lease is probably the first, after the franchise agreement, the first big relationship the franchisees have in their business. And it's crucial because whatever they negotiate, whatever they have in that lease, in that location, could make or break their business. So definitely this is something that is super important for franchisees and business owners in general to know. So let's get to the first question, which is why is managing, your lease so important? Like why should a business owner be really clear and have a process to manage the leases so that they can be aware of what's going on? Can you share a little bit about that,
Sure.
especially the things that you have experienced in, with your business right now? Because I'm sure you can tell all kinds of stories, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely for sure. I mean, we all understand that a real estate lease is an obligation. It's a binding contract between two parties, and it's all about the place that you are starting your business. So as you have an LOI, a letter of intent, which is an agreement that creates the structure to have a true binding lease, and that real estate lease could be 4 pages or 42 pages. And in each of those leases are a whole series of obligations. But the most important thing to understand is those obligations mean risk for you. There are key deadlines. If you run a handful of well, you know what? Maybe this is what we should do. Let's create a fictional character. We'll use Rachel as an example. Okay, names have been changed to protect the innocent. Brands. Let's make up a brand, Aisha. What kind of operator? What kind of business should we choose?
A lot of personal service nowadays. So how about Rachel Spa?
Rachel's Spa. Okay, got it. So it could be Rachel's Spa is like nail salons. It could be it could be like a whole suite of services. So
Facials,
Rachel,
yeah, they do facials, nail salon, spa, massages. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, so Rachel is smart enough to say, you know what? I think there's a really great market with spas. I think there's a fantastic location just down the street from where I live. I'm going to sign up and sign a franchise agreement with an incredibly strong franchisor. For that, the very first location that Rachel has to deal with are, am I getting enough traffic? How important is it that there is a very large co-tenant there? And what is a co-tenant? A co-tenant is someone that you depend on. It could be there's a Costco across the way or a Starbucks. I mean, who is your key customer? and why do they want to go into your spa? Um, the types of risks that are in a real estate lease. So I'll give you an example. It's
Actually,
not
before
the
you go there, question, are you
yeah.
talking about like an anchor business? Is that what you mean by a partner?
Yes, that's right. So
Mm.
co-tenancy is an anchor. You're right.
Mm.
Thank you for kind of slowing me down. But that's the most important part of a real estate leases. There's certain terminology, there's certain language that
Hmm.
you might not be armed to best answer, and that's why you'll probably have a real estate broker. But moving into the details, once you have the the rent established, right, the key parts of a lease agreement are dates and dollars. The dollars being what's the base rent? What are the dates upon which I actually owe my first rent payment? So for Rachel starting out, she's got to hit an opening date. There's probably some pre-construction that you need to do to fit out the space. No space is perfect for your use case. I need 12 sinks, I need different stations. So making sure that your landlord gives you certain concessions. A concession could be free rent when you sign the LOI and when you're targeting what your opening date is, you would like to not pay rent because you can only afford to pay rent after you open. So that's one.
That would be
Obviously,
nice.
base rent. It would be nice. The other concession is, let's say, a tenant improvement allowance. If the landlord really needs you in that space because they're hungry or they're very desirous to have you create this broad mix across that retail shopping plaza or that center, then they would hopefully, and you need to be smart enough to negotiate a tenant improvement allowance. And what that means is it's a dollar amount that they will give you as a check when you complete your construction. And the reason they give you that money is because they know that they want you as a tenant for 10 years. And that dollar amount is kind of distributed, let's call it amortized across that 10-year term. So the landlord feels like, wow, it's worth it for me to cut Rachel a check for, I'm making up a number here, $50,000 for the build out. And Rachel says, wow, I get free rent and tenant improvement allowance. When I hit my opening date, I can get my 50,000 bucks back, and then I'm ready to start paying rent. So the key parts of a lease are dates and dollars, but there's also a whole host of details, what we call these critical clauses. Things like, let's say, call it an anchor tenant. If an anchor tenant departs, call it a co-tenancy provision. Do you, as Rachel, are you personally guaranteed on the lease? The business doesn't work out. Does the landlord have the right to come back after you personally with whatever savings you have left in your 401k and your IRAs? Like, that's not a good situation to be in. So making certain that you negotiate any kind of guarantee provisions out of the lease. Things like CAM, common area maintenance.
Mm.
The landlord
Yeah,
might say,
all this lingo, right, that happens on leases, all these words and letters and three letter words
exactly.
that acronyms that people don't even know and understand what all that means, right? Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. So if it's a 10-year lease that Rachel signed up for, there are certainly there's a base rent that's paid in the first year, and generally it steps up and steps up because you're building your business, and the landlord is willing to and highly desirous to get more money over time. But you got to make sure that you afford it. So common area maintenance is also a cost that's put into that lease that you're obligated to pay. So Rachel's got that one location or maybe two, now five locations. The amount of common area maintenance, you might be responsible for cleaning of the parking lot or the landscaping of that plaza. A share of how big your square footage is related to all the other tenants in that building. Now, you have to make certain that the lease that you've signed is the exact square footage that you're leasing. And a common area maintenance, that allocation is based on the percentage of the space that you have in that plaza. The very crazy, tricky things that sometimes happen, and in some cases, it's a legitimate mistake. In other cases, it's let's see if the tenant's paying attention. We hope to get this $5,000 check at the end of each year because let's say my calculations are off. We have seen so
Wow.
many conditions where there's not a cap on your common area maintenance. What is the percentage that you're actually owed? So if there's no cap, meaning there's no ceiling on it, the amount that you'll be paid, you'll have to pay. It's a big problem.
Wow, yes.
So
So definitely
common area
managing your
maintenance.
lease and understanding, what's going on with your lease is critical for a business owner because all these things that you already talked about, I mean, it can truly affect your business. So while a business owner usually worried about, sales and labor costs and cost of goods and hiring and training and all those things, the lease is not just the beginning of it. You have to ongoingly be looking at the things and the elements in your lease to make sure that your business is still protected and safe and can actually cover all those things. So I could see how that's so important, right? Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Because, Rachel, as she's starting out, she's hoping to make money, and for that real estate lease to be in compliance, and you're one step ahead. You want to keep as much of that hard-earned money, as your net profit in your pocket as possible, and avoid surprises. You don't want to forget. Let's talk about renewal deadlines. You're now in that space, and you're coming up on your 10-year renewal. You have a certain time frame upon which to give your landlord a notice that you wish to renew. Because if you forget that date, that landlord could say, I'm sorry, you were supposed to tell me 180 days before. We're actually at 160 days before. You missed it by a couple of months. They won't give you a pass, not in this market, and you'll lose that space. So
Why would they
all
not give you a pass? Why would they not give you a pass, Stash? Is that because, I mean, you say not in this market. Is that because a lot of people waiting for locations and more than likely they're going to give it to somebody else? Is that because they're going to charge them more rent? Like why there's no, grace period of some
Grace
sort, right?
period. Yes, this is the game of real estate. I'm so glad you asked,
Mm,
Aisha.
mm.
The whether it's this market or really any market, landlords who have spent millions of dollars on a development, they're looking for any opportunity to get even greater value. They can look to increase the rent or potentially even find a better tenant. And I hate to say this, but maybe Rachel's Spa is strong, but there might be an even stronger national credit tenant that they will say, look, Rachel, thank you so much. We appreciate it. You've been a fantastic tenant. We have to go with some big other X brand. So you don't want to be at a disadvantage. There is no such thing as grace period. Some of our customers have said, I've got a really good relationship with our landlord, but that's what they said before they signed up with us. They've recognized that the squeeze that a landlord can make, they can give you a grace period, Aisha,
Mm.
but they'll say, you know what, you missed it. Is it okay if we raise your rent by at least 2%? Because that's the only way we can make it work. And then suddenly you don't have any of the cards. You've lost power in the relationship. So I'll talk. We talk about renewal options. Let me talk about now when Rachel goes to 50 locations. She might be looking at potentially relocating and closing down a store and moving it to where there's a new development, either across the street or within that same footprint. There are conditions in a lease that if Rachel's smart enough to negotiate, it's called a termination option, which is if you give the landlord X amount of months and there's certain conditions that you've met, like you've paid the rent on time, you've had the rent steps, you provide all these notices, you could potentially terminate your lease at no cost. And
Before the term is complete.
that's right, it's an early
Mm.
termination
Okay.
provision.
Hmm.
So as Rachel now goes to her 50th location, she's saying, I'm going to move two of these over here. Last thing she wants to deal with is missing that early termination option because then she's left forced to continue paying rent in a place that she doesn't want to be. Her relocation, where she can make even more money with higher sales and a potentially lower rent, is completely lost. So it's not just renewal deadlines, it's early termination provisions. When does your personal guarantee burn off? Is there a letter of credit? This is the complexity of the game of real estate. It's dates, dollars, and details. The details of those critical clauses that we just simply touched on: caps on CAM, percentage rent, personal guarantees, co-tenancy. I mean, it's complicated, and
It's
that's why
complicated.
that's
Yeah.
why we've done everything in our power to make it easy, right?
Yeah, no, I see that. So, okay, so you talked about some, like I said, these initials, these words, right? So we talked about LOI. So can you, what is an LOI? Just for the audience out there that may
Sure.
not have all the details on what all these things mean, right? So what is LOI first, Taj?
Yeah, absolutely. So an LOI is a letter of intent. It's non-binding, meaning, is anyone going to hold your feet to the fire? Are they going to sue you if you can't meet the conditions? Think of it as a framework that I need to start my rent on this date. I need to have a space of this size. I need to have a dollar amount of my base rent, what these rent steps are. It is simply a framework for what the lease will be created from. Both parties sign it, the landlord and you. It probably takes a couple of months maybe to negotiate. Sometimes it could be faster, but that effort then becomes this, it's a multi-threaded plan as you move forward because then you're saying, I got an LOI, fantastic, but that's where the work really begins. The lease has not been signed. So one of the threads is you're working with an attorney, you're getting the landlord to draft that lease agreement that hopefully meets the requirements of your LOI. But in the meantime, you're focused on opening and training and construction and marketing and getting all that going. So over time, you start to lose the visibility into the risk that sometimes are embedded in your real estate lease, either knowingly or unknowingly. There could be a little condition or a little clause that you look at and say, you know what, I'm okay. I don't need to worry about my the condition of, let's say, my insurance coverage. Oh, I need a X, $1 million policy for my space. Maybe that insurance coverage is way out of market.
Sometimes business owners are so excited about being able to find the location because there's been weeks and months looking for one, and they like, look, they just want to have it signed, and because
Yeah.
of that, they rush into it, and that's when we make mistakes, right? And mistakes that can maybe in the moment you think it's not much, but at the end it could cost you a lot. So LOI, letter of intent. It's a document to say that you're gonna have intent, but it is not totally done yet. So okay, so got it. How about LOC? What does LOC stand for?
It's a letter of credit. So think of this as you're preparing to get financing, and if the bank says, "Hey," or if the landlord says, instead of providing a cash deposit to secure this, the bank, your bank, is guaranteeing the money to the landlord if you default. So a LOC is a letter of credit, and in some cases, the landlord would say, "Wow, the bank is backing this." And then the bank will come after you, Rachel, if you do default. So it gives some assurance to the landlord, but it is, again, another element of risk in the business that you're starting.
And how common are those? How often, like what percentage of leases end up having a LOC?
I would say, I mean, the numbers really vary market to market,
Mhm.
but I would say if you are a large franchise brand, if Rachel Spa has 500 locations or they're backed and they're growing and their AUVs are strong, you may not need one. Maybe your franchisor is signing as the guarantor, but those are the things that you really need to watch for because not only are you on the hook with your landlord to pay the rents on time, but you're on the hook with your bank, and the bank generally will come after you. So there's not a hard and fast number whether it's 10% or 20%. It kind of
Right.
varies the stage of the business and the market.
Okay. Well, let's go to another three-letter jargon. How about CAM? You mentioned CAM a couple of times. So what does CAM stand for?
Yeah, think of CAM as all the extras that you get as the benefit of being in that space. Common area maintenance. So it's things like what the landlord potentially is obligated to pay for, but you are going to get an allocated share of that cost. So the parking lot lights, landscaping, snow removal, general maintenance of the space around you. Anything that would be shared that people have, that all of the other tenants in that space get the benefit of, making sure that there's right monument signage and the parking lot's in good shape, etc, because you do have power if the landlord has not kept the parking lot in good repair or the parking lot lights are damaged. You have absolutely every right, if you have the right language, to push back and say, you did not do X, Y, and Z, the landlord obligations in the lease. You're giving me this huge bill. I've got to spend all this time in reconciling it. I'm not building my spa empire. Like these are like little ankle biter things. They're just so frustrating.
Yes, no, definitely. It's definitely a lot of details beyond what most people actually think about. And okay, so one last three-letter acronym. What about NNN, or I think it's called triple net? What does that
Yes.
stand for, right? It's like so many things.
Oh, for sure. So triple net, NNN, it means you pay the base rent plus taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. This means it's rent plus three extras. So when we talked about CAM just a moment, common area maintenance, now the landlord is saying you're responsible for paying your share of the property taxes that usually the governmental authorities tax the landlord. You're also responsible for insurance of that entire development. So it's rent plus three extra things. Some brands like it because they can control it and they can kind of manage it, but it's another risk area that you have to consider.
Definitely, because you don't know what kind of things are going to come up in the future that you're going to be on the hooks for, right? And
Yep.
yeah, that's definitely interesting. And I think I'd like to be a commercial landlord. This sounds like a very profitable type of business. You know, it's funny because when I was a director of operations overseeing almost 30 units here in the Atlanta market. We had one of our units that the parking lot sink in because of a pipe that was very old and it had been eroding at some point in time because of the water pressure going in through rains, and we were going through a very severe rainy season. And all of a sudden, they saw a little dip, and so we had to, make sure that nobody parked in that area. And now all of a sudden, the whole thing came down, and it was a big old hole in this big, parking lot, and one of our top performing units. And it ended up being because of the lease and whatever negotiations have been done. It was a corporate unit, so it was not. I was not a franchisee. I was running it for a company unit. But the way that lease had been written, we were on the hooks for that. And it became hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair that whole thing because we were responsible for the things that were in our parking lot. Once it hit the street, the city was responsible. But somehow, the moment that it hit our parking lot, we were responsible for that section. So we had to coordinate with both the city and our development teams to resolve the problem. And like I mentioned, it was a very expensive um, situation for the brand. And because of it, we had to block some of the areas. Some of the parking, was gone. And of course, when you see weird things, customers don't want to drive in because, so sales went down dramatically. I mean, the effect was really significant, and it took a long time to resolve.
I'm so
So,
glad you're sharing that story. I almost feel like I should be interviewing you now, Aisha,
yeah.
because it's not only a hit to revenue. It's like, oh, okay, we'll plan for this for 2 months. It's going to be repaired.
Mhm.
How long does it take for that revenue to recover? The loss of brand equity and in the consumer's mind, it's like, you know what, I don't even want to park there because I don't think it's safe. Or, oh, a new competing brand just popped up around the corner. I'm gonna delete the app that I was in for this location and get the app for there. So I mean, the repercussions for something as silly as a condition in
Absolutely.
a lease to say, we're no longer, we're not obligated to maintain a parking lot
Mhm.
that maybe we're paying some portion of CAM, but it's crazy. We just need this 2,000 square feet. Like, that's a horrific
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, I have been, oh, I mean, I managed a lot of very large regions. I can tell you all kinds of other stories. We had a unit where we didn't realize, and it was not really a lease thing, but I mean, you would think that it would have been a mention of it, that we couldn't put any signage on the street because of city requirements. And I mean, it's just like air conditioning's breaking down, and not in the franchisee not realizing that they're responsible for them. They thought that their landlord was supposed to fix it because they are tenants. And usually, when you are in a tenant situation on a regular, a family home, the landlord fixes, a lot of things. But so they assume because they did not read the lease, and then they realized they were, hit with an $8,000 bill because they complained about the air conditioning, and it was on them to fix. I mean, it is the
Yeah.
amount of issues and challenges that could come. Now, it could be that you could decide. to accept that because that's the only way they're going to give you this amazing location. But that means that your emergency fund should be bigger than it would normally be if you didn't have that particular responsibility, right? Because you should always have an emergency fund. And if you know that you're going to be responsible for some of these potential R&Ms or repair and maintenance, that you need to have that fund ready. So I think it's part of the process of thinking through your lease, right, Taj?
Absolutely. Let's talk about Rachel for a second here. When she signed her first lease and now she's got 50 locations, what happens if she does not have a strong exclusivity clause or an exclusivity provision? So it's Rachel Spa. Fantastic, amazing brand. Customers go to her because it's spa is a very broad category. If she doesn't have an exclusivity provision that covers if a landlord puts a direct competitor in that space, it could be a really big nail salon. It could be a really big tanning salon. It could be a really big massage uh, provider. So Rachel needs to make certain that that exclusivity provision prevents a landlord from putting a competitor right next door. Can you imagine that? Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, this is great. I've got a brand new opening, and boom, there's a competitor right next door. That's because she didn't have that thought.
Exclusivity, yeah. Yeah, and so now all the sales projections that you had are out the window because they're not going to apply because now you have a direct competitor a couple of doors down. And now you have to, now you have competitive intrusion that you could have prevented if you had negotiated the right things, which brings the question, what are the types of things that, franchisees, business owners could negotiate in this lease? What do you think that are negotiable? And obviously it varies by tenant, but what are the things that we should consider negotiating when we're looking at the leases?
Well, really, everything's negotiable up to a point. I mean, you have to hammer out in your LOI the things that are non-starters. So, for example, exclusivity provision. You need to make certain that this is the space that I'm going to lease, and these are the conditions upon which you will never, ever have a competitor in there. So, definitely negotiate that. Ask for free rent. Free rent is that period when you have that signed lease to potentially when you open. Negotiate the heck out of that. The landlord's going to ask for some concessions. Maybe your tenant improvement allowance, TIA, may go down, but that's absolutely imperative. The other is what is the base rent when you start? What are the accelerators or what are the rent steps or the increases that you can expect in years 2 through 10? Are they pegged, meaning are they related to some index, consumer price index or inflation? I mean, there are problems with that. If you were to say, oh, you know what, inflation's only been at 2% historically, I'm probably fine. But what if inflation goes to 6%? You're going to be hit with a surprise. So negotiate what your step up rents are, negotiate what your um, cap on CAM is. Make sure that you don't get surprise bills. Make sure you understand what the base year is of your CAM charges. They might say, the base year is 2019 and the index now for 2026 might be based on that. And like, oh my gosh, what are the percentage change between 2019 2026? So these
You
are
can
like
actually negotiate a cap, meaning that okay, this is going to be the cam, but it would never be more than X. So anything above that, like the hole in my parking lot,
yeah.
would then be in the landlord side.
Yeah, I'd
Mhm.
say the most important, where pretty much everyone gets tripped up, is when your lease expires. You know what the notice period is. Make that notice period as long as possible. In some cases, it can be, up to a year or two. Try to negotiate that. And if you don't, that's why you would have a solution like Leasecake. You can get a reminder well in advance to evaluate your options. But if there is a fixed rate for that 10-year renewal, try to lock that down and make certain as you grow and your revenue hopefully keeps that percentage rent at a percentage that you're comfortable with. try to lock that in. We've seen many, many leases and renewals that are based on market rates. Okay, so tell me, Aisha, how much do you think you can sell your house 2 years from now? I don't know.
Right. I mean, you have no way,
Exactly.
right? You have no way of knowing. And we know things can crash fast and we know things can go up, in at a ridiculous rate. So,
Correct. Yeah, and
and then
market rates.
how do you do a business planning, that is, worth its paper if you
Yeah.
don't, if you don't have anything more solid than, market rate, right?
Yeah,
I like the caps.
and how do you determine what a market rate is? You would say, "Oh, I trust my broker. I trust." So what's the process upon which, do you get three quotes when you're ready to renew? Is that considered market? So try to avoid as much gray area as possible is really the key.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, definitely. So can you share, based on your experience with, helping so many, franchisees and business owners with these leases, what are some of the key or hidden costs or dangers that maybe not happen all the time, but that you have found that come up in the lease? What are those little things that we need to look at, as little letters, right, at the bottom of the documents that people should be aware of?
for sure. Like specific examples of hard dollars that have impacted our customers, you know, well before some of the experience that they've had. Let's say you plan to open within 3 months of signing that lease. If you don't have an extension upon which to get your tenant improvement allowance, or let's say it's a free rent period, but only for 3 months, what if the build out's delayed? If you have a condition in there, I mean, you can certainly save thousands of dollars. We've got story after story of very favorable conditions that people were able to negotiate to help manage and mitigate any construction delays. So that's one example. Others are, I mean, it can definitely add up fast. Talk about the square footage. You're leasing 1,800 square feet in an 18,000 square foot strip plaza. Do the math. What percentage of CAM are you obligated to pay? So many landlords just say, you know what, it's about 1,800 square foot. Trust me, trust me, trust me. Why would you want to pay more for space you don't have? Yeah, you had mentioned, Aisha, what if your HVAC unit goes down? Are you responsible for that? Is your landlord? Was that negotiated in the lease? What if there's a leak in the roof? A lot of times, I mean, let's just say Rachel's smart enough to say, I want to control my destiny. I'm a spa. It's definitely an HVAC system that meets our specifications for our discerning customers, but she has a warranty on that. What about when that warranty expires? Wouldn't it be great to look at that unit in month 35 and not wait until it expires in a 3 year warranty? Because that would prevent any kind of surprise hit on maintenance that suddenly it's like, oh crap, I got to spend $10,000 to fix or maintain that. If you forget an option deadline, my gosh, it's hundreds of thousands, potentially millions. I mean, if Rachel's saying, I've got 1.5 million in average unit volume for the one location out of my 50, and the landlord says, I'm sorry, Rachel, you missed your renewal option. Think about the
Mm.
impact
Oh, that would be absolutely terrible. Yeah.
to the staff, to the
Mhm.
team, to the customers.
Yeah.
Everybody is impacted, not to mention your reputation. So you'd never want to be caught with missing a renewal option. And likewise, you don't want to be caught with being forced to stay in a space if you don't have an early termination provision
Mm.
as you grow and get more sophisticated. Um, I mean, geez, we've had a customer, sorry, not a customer, somebody that was looking for a solution. They said, we spent $305,000 because we missed an early termination. If we had only known about it 2 months before. So, yeah, I mean, just that's
So two
crazy.
months cost them, how much money? Oh
$305,000
my
because they
Lord.
were forced to stay in that renewal. It doesn't
Mm.
mean that they're forced to continue to operate. They might have moved anyway,
Right.
but where's that cash coming from?
I mean, that's a huge expense. Yeah, for sure. As a matter of fact, yesterday we have this franchisee mastermind, and I was speaking with one of our franchisees, and he's in the process of opening his second unit. Super excited. It's a build up from nothing, and he's speaking of delayed opening. His opening got delayed because when he took over the location, it was infested with roaches. And so he was not able to have, the ability to even start the leasehold improvements until that was addressed. And so they did have a certain amount of free rent, but because obviously this was something that was taken over, from the landlord is actually working with them on extending the free months of rent while this issue is resolved. I mean, it's just amazing how many things, what did they say? The Murphy Law, it could happen, is bound to happen, or something like that.
Yep. If things can go wrong, they will.
It will go wrong. So he was telling me yesterday how, so now, yeah, he's delayed, I think 2 to 3 months, but he's a membership-based business, and so now he had started already the membership, rally and marketing, and now the customers that were ready to get going in a month, now they're gonna have to wait 4 months, and now he not only has to, work with the landlord to fix the situation, but now he needs to come up with ways to nurture those clients so that they had already joined into the membership to not go away. So the impact is not just, oh, delayed opening, it's, the relationship with your franchisees and sorry, with your customers, and their experience, which is not what you want. I mean, it is just so much, and all
Yeah.
because the location was not ready to be taken over and had this, serious issue of
Yeah.
a roach infestation
Yeah.
that you do
And
not
yeah,
want in your business,
yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, that's the condition of the premises. So the landlord's obligation is to deliver the condition of the premises. And again, that's a condition you need to negotiate hard for to avoid what you're just saying, Aisha. They need to be ready and built upon, and the whole build out can proceed without any further delay. It needs to be clean and ready to go.
And ready to go. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, this has been very enlightening, Mr. Tash. Thank you very much for sharing all this information. Can you give us like one last little bit, anything that franchisees need to be aware of and just plan for and think in a different way about their leases? Any last thoughts on that?
Of course, number one tip, don't run your business on sticky notes and spreadsheets. Don't pretend that you've got a system when it's smart sheets. If you're trying to build something yourself and you think it's good enough, well, guess what? Good enough isn't good enough anymore. Don't Frankenstein a solution for lease management. Focus on your business growth. Don't worry about the real estate side. Make certain that you've got a system that works. It's like you won't run your restaurant or your store or Rachel's Spa without a point of sale system. So you shouldn't manage your leases without the right tools or software, because one date, one missed date, one overlooked clause can hit you big.
Especially as you get bigger, right? Because if you have one unit, okay, you can manage one lease, is doable. But one of the things that we obviously help our clients is to go multi-unit, because we want them to go from, one unit. We say always one unit is a job. So if you want a job, hey, have at it, have one unit. But if you want to grow and achieve true time and financial freedom, that can only happen if you go multi-unit. And with multi-unit comes a lot of other things you need to consider. Yes, you eventually get freedom because you have a team that you can delegate to, but part of the work is creating and having, the systems, the processes, the procedures to help you manage that enterprise. And, one of the things to think about is those leases that if you don't actually manage them proactively can really cost you a lot. So having said that, can you share a little bit about what Leasecake does? Like what is Leasecake, and how can that help franchisees manage their leases better so that they can, when you say don't worry about it, but no worry because you already done something to manage it, right? So what does Leasecake does, and how does that help franchisees?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say, some of the best ideas happen around a kitchen table. And when I met a gentleman over a cup of coffee at a diner, he said, Taj, you should build this because I'm missing key things to run my business. So what we are is a risk and compliance based lease and location management solution. It's called Leasecake for a reason. Not only is it cute and kitschy, rhymes with cheesecake, and yes, it's a piece of cake, but from my history, my parents were commercial tenants as well, and they were building their business empire. They moved from Canada to Florida. And as they said, get into business. I became a chartered accountant, but my journey was very different. When I hear of a really good idea, something that's never before been created that Google and spreadsheets and Dropbox and calendar alerts don't answer, I recognize the need for a solution that is remarkably easy to use. It takes all of your lease data into a system that's incredibly flexible. It's beautifully designed, but it's really software that works for you and not the other way around. And what I mean by that is lease administration's been around for decades. You can't simply just throw technology at a problem. Many of the legacy systems that are out there have not kept up with how we work today. We're always out on the field, on the go. Yeah, Aisha, you and all of your members of the academy are always on the go. Rachel, that we just talked about, they're focused on building their business empire, but they need to have information in the palm of their hand. So what we do is we take every date, dollar, detail, fully abstracted into a mobile application. We're the only company that also has a native app on the Apple Store and on Android. And by taking that information, we liberate it and put it in the hands of people that you've hired are really smart. You don't need a vast real estate team. In fact, many of our customers don't have a real estate team. They have smart people that obviously wear multiple hats. Could be the CEO, COO, all the way down to the administrative assistant, but also across their ecosystem of business service providers. So what makes Leasecake special is we're better when shared. Our customers share Leasecake with defined roles and permissions to their accounting firm, to their lawyer, to their real estate broker, to their insurance broker, to their banker. And every one of those partners, those business service providers, have helped your members and have helped Rachel get her business off the ground. And that is really, I think, one of the most impactful areas that allow you to save money with your business providers. Your attorneys don't have to charge as much in attorney's fees. Your accounting firm could create your financial statements so much faster. So there's an efficiency play and a productivity play.
Mm,
Having that
awesome.
sole source of truth, having flexibility, a system that works for you, very customizable reporting, very empowering and across the organization and also across your business providers, but also the productivity of your team. You can do in minutes what it's taken hours, days, weeks to do if you don't have a system.
Mm.
So that's kind of really it in a nutshell. We have now over 40,000 customers and locations on our platform, hundreds of brands, corporate brands as well, 10 locations, 10,000 locations globally. And it's an honor to serve them because frankly, we're a solution that has needed to exist for decades.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna ask you, like, if you were a franchisee, at how many units should you start looking for a solution like this? Because obviously it's not free, obviously, right? So it's an investment and there's certain amount of, that work. So what do you recommend? How many units do you need to have to start really thinking about this type of solution?
yeah, I would say it's a great question. I would say if you really truly have a growth mindset, start thinking about a solution when you're at three, four, five locations. If you've got financing, you've got other joint venture partners, you're starting to become not just a multi-unit, but a multi-brand player. That's when you need to have a system in place by the time you hit 10, 20 locations, if you have that growth mindset. Don't build the plane while it's heading down the runway. Make certain that you have a solution that works. 5 to 10 locations, can you do it on spreadsheets? Probably, but the risk that you face is monumental, right? It's going to it's going to wipe out all your profits. So once you get to 20 locations on up, if you've got that growth and your plan, as Rachel did, that's getting one step ahead. It's like the best time to plant a tree.
Yeah,
20
definitely.
years
And
ago or
and
today.
and you need to care for me, like, because if you have a few units, right, you may still miss some things if you even if you have it in Excel sheet because it's the clock is not going to be pulling up saying, hey, pay attention to this thing. It's an Excel sheet. It's there. It's sitting there. Unless you go look at it,
Yeah.
you won't know that something is happening or pending. But with your platform, you had notifications and reminders and hey, you got to pay attention to this thing, right? And that's how, which now in these days, we're so busy with so many things that being able to have that support is so important. So this has
Yeah.
been amazing, Tash. I really appreciate you coming here and sharing this information. I know it's something that is super important for our franchisees and business owners. Really, anyone that has a lease and you, like you say, has that mind set of growth and development of multi-unit, and if you're looking at platforms and processes to help you manage the business better. This is something that you may want to consider, in your organization. I know that we have several of our franchisee clients that are multi-unit using you as their service provider, and they say great things about it. So, thank you, Taj, for spending the time to be here with us and sharing this in our podcast so that our followers and clients can hear and learn more about you and your organization. So, can you please share a little bit about where can people find you in the world if they want to learn more about your business?
Absolutely. We are leasecake.com. Rhymes with cheesecake. It's two words that probably don't belong together, but it's working. Leasecake.com. I'm available. You can definitely shoot me an email, go through American Franchise Academy to get in touch with me. I would say we live to serve. If there's anything that you need help with from evaluations, from services, lease abstraction, not just technology, we are really a full suite solution. So we're looking forward to helping grow and transform business, not just here in North America, but globally.
Thank you, Tash, for that. And for those of you that are watching this podcast, we're going to be putting in the show notes not only the link to reach out to Taj and Lease Cake, but also we're going to give you a little gift. If you go to the notes, we're going to have a link for you to download a summary of all the things that we talked about here about leases and things that you need to be aware of so that you can have that as a guide when you are negotiating and reviewing your next lease. Again, the American Franchise Academy is all about knowledge, tools, and resources to help franchisees be successful. And that's just one more way that we're going to help you make that happen. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it, folks. That was a great interview with Taj and all his knowledge on leases. So, if you are a franchisee or a business owner and you have a mindset for growth, think of how you managing your leases. What are the things that you are not fully knowledgeable on and the things that you might not have been paying enough attention? Go back and review the existing listings that you have. And if you're going to continue to grow, what is the system, the process, the platform maybe that you're going to be using to manage your leases so that you don't miss those key things that Tash shared with us today. So I hope that you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and that way you will be able to get access to future sessions like this. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.